Paul Whelan is speaking out in his first interview since being released. He was freed as part of a historic prisoner swap in August. We all remember that. 2 years earlier, he watched the Biden administration negotiate deals to bring home basketball star Brittney Griner and another American, but he was left behind. First on CBS Mornings Plus, Whelan told Face the Nation moderator Margaret Brennan about the full circle moment he had minutes after touching down on U.S. soil at an airbase in Virginia.
There was a TV on, and I'm standing by the TV watching, and somebody said, "Oh, it's just the Olympics." I was like, "Really?" Because I hadn't seen the Olympics, and you know, it was women's basketball. And as I'm looking, I said, "Hey, look, it's Brittney. Brittney's on TV."
Brittney Griner.
Yeah. But it was one of those incredible moments where you're finally connecting things. Yeah. And
It's surreal.
It is. But Brittney was a great help. After she came home, I think probably within days of her getting home, she was talking to people about how they could support me. And she had people making monetary donations, sending cards, sending letters, offering all sorts of support.
Joining us from Washington is Chief Foreign Affairs Correspondent Margaret Brennan. Margaret, an incredible interview and access that you have there. There's so little that we know about what life is like in Russia when you are a prisoner. What did he tell you about being in a labor camp?
It was cold. It was remote. He described what he called sleep deprivation as torture. He had lights shown in his face every 2 hours by Russian guards. What you heard him describe in that clip was a high moment. He told us his lowest moment was in 2022. That's when he was on the factory line at the labor camp. The warden pulled him off the floor to tell him that he had been left behind again, the second time in a U.S.-Russia prisoner swap. And that made his life even harder. Paul Whelan said he was sewing buttons on uniforms for Russian soldiers in these factories. The food was terrible. He lost a tremendous amount of weight. He told us he coped in part by writing letters home and making friends with other prisoners who were mainly younger inmates, he said, from mainly Muslim Central Asian countries, and he tried to learn their languages so that the Russian guards couldn't understand their conversations. He also shared that there are secret networks inside these prison camps and that they essentially bribed guards to provide them with burner phones so that they could make calls to the outside world. That is how we as journalists heard some of the reporting about Paul Whelan when he called into networks or called into radio shows. Those were secret phones. They basically just paid off corrupt Russian guards.
Wow, fascinating on every level. Margaret, I imagine when he found out he would be going home, he was overjoyed. But what did he say about that moment of learning the news that this is going to end?
This was the most emotional part of our conversation. Before he left Russia, they put Whelan in solitary confinement for 5 days. So he came out of blackness, literally. He knew something was going to happen. He wasn't sure what. He had positive indications from the diplomats who had contact with him. But he said the next thing he knew, he was boarding a bus and then a plane with other prisoners. They landed in Turkey. And in that country, he was handed over to the U.S. They put him on a CIA plane, a small one, with 2 other wrongfully detained American prisoners, both of them journalists. And Whelan told us it didn't really sink in that he was coming home until he was flying over England, when he was in friendly airspace and he saw the white cliffs of Dover. He teared up telling us about that. He had no idea that when he landed in America that the president and vice president of the United States would be greeting him on the tarmac. And he said, he was mainly focused on just not falling coming down the stairs when he saw the president of the United States in front of him.
What a moment. Margaret Brennan, thank you so much. And you at home can watch her entire interview with Paul Whelan on Face the Nation this Sunday here on CBS.